The Four of Wands from the Oak Tarot of Love and Romance by Joe Bandel completely upends the traditional expectation of this card being a simple victory lap or a public wedding celebration. Usually when we see this card in a reading, we're looking at a stable foundation or a community party. But Bandel shifts the focus inward to the psychological tension between dreamy obsession and grounded service. He presents this fascinating juxtaposition where one partner is essentially floating in a cloud of romantic fantasy while the other is firmly planted on the earth, helping others. It makes me wonder if this specific version of the Four of Wands is actually more realistic about the unequal ways people experience the height of a relationship.
Bandel's work is deeply influenced by his years spent translating early 20th century German weird fiction and fantasy, which explains why his tarot feels more like a map of the subconscious than a collection of fortune-telling tropes. In the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck, the Four of Wands shows two figures celebrating under a floral canopy with a castle in the background. It's an outward social milestone. But in the Oak Tarot, the Four Wands create a protective square around a man who's lost in what Bandel calls a dreamy obsession. He's got that soft, distant look, eyes glazed over with a small smile, which perfectly captures that liminal state where you're physically present, but mentally miles away in a curated version of your own romance. Meanwhile, the woman in the scene is the anchor. She's focused on practical life, specifically on helping others. It's a dynamic of gentle longing versus grounded duty.
The use of the oak tree as a central symbol here is quite deliberate, too. In many of the Oak Tarot cards, that tree represents the reality required to sustain a connection once the initial chemical rush fades. If the Four Wands are forming a square, it suggests a structure. Yet the man inside that square isn't building anything, he's just existing in the fantasy. It's almost as if the wands are protecting him from the very reality the woman is busy navigating. Is Bandel suggesting that this kind of obsession is actually a form of isolation, even within a relationship?
It can be viewed that way. Bandel categorizes the suit of wands as representing spiritual love, which is a departure from the traditional association with fire, willpower, and raw action. For him, the wands are about the spiritual catalyst of attraction. In this specific card, the dreaminess isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's the sweet obsession that fuels the engine of a relationship. But the tension lies in the fact that it's a pull between two worlds. The colors reflect this perfectly. You've got these warm, dreamy golds and soft pinks that represent the fantasy world of the male experience in this card, clashing with the earthy greens that surround the woman's practical, service-oriented actions. It's a visual representation of how two people can be in the exact same relationship, but inhabit entirely different emotional frequencies.
The way he describes the male experience as a sweet obsession and the female experience as being pulled toward practical life feels like a very specific commentary on relationship roles. It's almost like one person gets to be the poet and the other has to be the plumber. Does this card suggest that this imbalance is a natural phase, or is it a warning that the relationship might be leaning too heavily on one person's labor while the other just enjoys the scenery?
The card invites the user to enjoy the romance while staying connected to everyday reality. So it's more of an invitation to find balance than a dire warning. The man's dreamy state is a form of fuel. Romantic fantasy is what gives a relationship its flavor and its why. Without that gentle longing and obsession, the partnership can become purely transactional and dry. On the flip side, if the woman didn't focus on being grounded and helping others, there would be no foundation for the man's dreams to sit on. The oak tree is the witness to both. It's strong and unmoving, suggesting that as long as there is a shared root system, these two different ways of being can coexist. The tension is described as gentle, not destructive. It's the friction that keeps the connection alive.
That idea of spiritual love in the suit of wands is interesting because it implies that the obsession isn't just about physical attraction or superficiality. It's about seeing the partner as an ideal, almost a divine figure. But isn't that dangerous? If you're lost in a fantasy, you aren't really seeing the person standing in front of you. You're seeing a projection. How does that square with the woman's experience of being kind and grounded?
That's exactly where the nuance of the Oak Tarot shines. Traditional tarot often looks for harmony as a state of sameness, but Bandel looks for it in the balance of opposites. The man's projection of the ideal provides the relationship with its spiritual aspiration. He sees what the relationship could be at its most beautiful. The woman sees what it is in the present moment. She's helping others, which grounds her in the community and the real world. In a way, she provides the safety that allows him to dream. If she weren't there to hold the earthly space, his obsession might turn from sweet to untethered or even manic. The protective square of the wands is key. It's a sanctuary. It says that for a moment, it's okay for one person to be the dreamer while the other is the doer, as long as they are both within the same square, under the same oak.
I'm looking at those colors again, the golds and pinks. They feel very much like a sunset or a dawn, those times of day where everything looks better than it actually is because of the light. It's a temporary state. In a traditional Four of Wands reading, you're usually told to celebrate your successes, but here, the success isn't a finished house or a wedding. The success is the fact that you've created a space where you can actually afford to be obsessed with each other. It's a luxury of the spirit.
That's a great way to put it. It's the luxury of emotional safety. When you feel secure, you can afford to let your mind wander into those romantic territories. For the person experiencing that male-coded side of the card, the obsession feels like a homecoming. It's a return to a state of wonder. For the female-coded side, the grounding isn't a burden, it's a choice. She focuses on helping others because she is already filled up by the romantic energy of the relationship. She doesn't need to daydream to escape her life because her life, anchored by that oak tree, is already fulfilling. The gentle tension comes from the fact that they aren't looking at each other. He's looking inward at the fantasy, and she's looking outward at the world. Their connection is felt through the environment they've built together, represented by those four wands, rather than through direct eye contact.
It's a very solitary version of a partnership card. Usually the Four of Wands is the wedding card, the ultimate symbol of two becoming one in the eyes of the community. But in this deck, they remain distinct individuals with very different internal lives. One is in the clouds, one is in the soil. It challenges the idea that intimacy means doing everything the same way or even feeling the same thing at the same time.
Bandel's system often demands that the user take responsibility for the terror of another person's unpredictability. You can't just assume your partner is feeling exactly what you are. This card is a mirror for that. It asks the dreamer, are you neglecting the practical reality your partner is maintaining? And it asks the grounded one, are you leaving room for the magic and the obsession that makes the work worth it? The card doesn't say one is better than the other. It says this is the current climate. It's a time of longing. Longing isn't a lack of something. It's the desire for more of it, even when it's right there. That's the sweet part. It's the realization that even in a stable four-walled structure, there is still more to discover and more to dream about.
The historical context of the oak tree in folklore often links it to endurance and sovereignty. If the oak is the anchor, it suggests that this dynamic isn't just a fleeting crush, it's a stage of a long-term commitment. In the early stages of a relationship, like the Three of Wands in this deck, the sparks are everywhere, and it's all electric. But by the time we get to the four, the sparks have been replaced by a glow. The four wands are glowing, which is a more sustainable, steady light than a spark. It's the difference between a lightning strike and a hearth fire.
Exactly. A hearth fire requires someone to tend to it, which is where that grounded, practical energy comes in. You can't live in a house made of sparks. You need the wood, the hearth, and the structure. The man's obsession is the heat of the fire, and the woman's service is the gathering of the wood. The Oak Tarot is very clear that a sustainable future requires deep roots. If the man never comes out of his dream, the roots might wither from neglect. If the woman never joins him in the dream, she might burn out from the weight of the reality. The Four of Wands is that middle point where the structure is built, the protection is there, and now the couple has to learn how to inhabit those roles without losing themselves.
It's a fascinating pivot from the celebration theme we usually see. It suggests that the real celebration is the ability to coexist in your differences. The man gets to be soft and distant, his face dreamy with a small smile, because he is safe. The woman gets to be kind and grounded, because she is supported. The gentle longing is what keeps them reaching for each other across that gap between fantasy and reality. It turns the concept of a foundation from something physical, like a house, into something emotional, like a shared atmosphere.
And it's important to note the colors again. The earthy greens are what anchor the scene. No matter how pink and gold the dreams get, they are still surrounded by the green of the oak and the earth. It's a reminder that even the most beautiful spiritual love has to have a place to land. Joe Bandel's interpretation really forces you to look at the work of love. It's not just a feeling that happens to you, it's a square you build and a tree you plant. The Four of Wands is the moment you realize that the fantasy and the reality are both necessary parts of the same whole.
If someone pulls this card, it's a nudge to look at where they're standing. Are they the one lost in the pink clouds or the one with their hands in the green earth? Neither is wrong, but both need to acknowledge the other for the protective square to hold. It's a beautiful, complicated vision of what stability actually looks like in a romantic sense. It isn't the absence of tension, it's the presence of a tension that feels like home.
That's the big takeaway from Bandel's version of the Four. Stability isn't a static, finished state. It's a dynamic balance between two people who are constantly navigating the distance between who they are and who they imagine each other to be. The oak tree stands there through all of it, growing slowly, reminding us that the most enduring connections are the ones that can hold both the dream and the daily life without breaking.
The Four of Wands in the Oak Tarot reminds us that romance thrives in the space between our highest ideals and our most practical duties. Understanding how to balance that dreamy obsession with a grounded commitment is the key to building a relationship that lasts. If this perspective on love and the tarot resonated with you, share this episode with someone who might be navigating their own balance of fantasy and reality.